Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Eileen Buckley, senior reporter at WBFO, and thank you for joining us for our live Facebook chat on the issue of cyberbullying, a relentless cycle. We have a great panelist set up today, and we also want to thank AT&T for helping us to present this event. AT&T has taken a proactive role to educate students, parents, and teachers of the dangers of cyberbullying and provides numerous resources for the public. We want to thank all of you out there for joining us as well on Facebook. In our digital lives, we are always connected to the world, and we know for decades that bullying has certainly been a problem in schools, but of course with the increase of electronic devices, it is certainly becoming a 24/7 cycle. So during our panel discussion, we will talk about possible strategies to help students, teachers, and parents with this problem to help minimize cyberbullying. And as you join us, please help us as we facilitate this conversation on the dangerous behavior. Please post your questions for our panelists, and we will do our best to answer as much as we can. Now, throughout this event, you will see on the Facebook feed important numbers for crisis services and the National Suicide Hotline. If you or anyone you know is having any problems, please call those numbers for help. Of course, now I want to introduce our panelists that are joining us here today. We have Tracy Rodemeyer. She is the mother of Jamie Rodemeyer, the Williamsville teenager who took his life in 2011 because of bullying. Amanda Nickerson is joining us. She is director of UB's Alberti Center for Bullying Abuse Prevention. And Daniela Wolf is also here. She is a social worker at the Amherst School District and serves as a Dignity Act coordinator. Thank you all for joining our discussion today. It's a pleasure to have you here and your expertise on our discussion. I just want to give a little number here. Last fall, there were results of a survey released. It was conducted by Siena Research Institute along with the Tyler Clementi Foundation and AT&T. Jane Clementi, of course, is the mother of Tyler, who took his own life after being bullied online. The results are very far-reaching on cyberbullying and how much teens in upstate New York are experiencing this. Statewide, 26% said that they have been cyberbullied, 56% say they've witnessed online bullying, and here in Western New York, about 19% of teens surveyed said that they've been cyberbullied. Tracy, I really want to begin with your story because it really truly delivers the reason why we're here and that we must help to prevent cyberbullying. 6 years ago this month, your son recorded a message on YouTube. It was part of the It Gets Better campaign for LGBT youth. We have a very short clip from the full video where Jamie references Lady Gaga to send a message to other youth bullied because of their sexuality.
Lady Gaga, she makes me so happy, and she lets me know that I was born this way. And that's my advice to you from her. You were born this way, and all you have to do is hold your head up, hold your head up, and you'll go far. Because that's all you have to do. Just love yourself and you're set.
Well, Tracy, you and your husband Tim have worked very hard to travel to schools and reach out to students about Jamie's story, and he was relentlessly bullied. And from what I understand, it didn't really end after his death. Were you first aware of that YouTube clip that he made at the time?
Unfortunately, I did not get to see that video until the rest of the world did. And basically, we were patrolling the kids, you know, to watch what they put on the internet because it's always out there. So I used to warn the kids, especially Jamie, just to think before you put something out there. If you're going to put something out there, you know, we need to see it. But of course, Jamie, being a 14-year-old boy, decided to act on his own. And I think it's because he was so passionate about people, how they were getting bullied, that he wanted to see if he could help others. And we didn't realize till after he had passed that he was helping so many people that were getting bullied, a lot of them the LGBT. But again, that was Jamie's way, I think, even of convincing himself that that times are tough here, but it will get better.
Can you talk about how that bullying didn't quite stop after his death, unfortunately? I know your daughter dealt with it too.
Yeah, here it was, you know, when we set up the funeral for Jamie, we made sure we put it on a Saturday so all the kids from the schools can go, and, you know, not miss out. But it was a couple days prior that Alyssa and Jamie were planning on attending the school dance. It would have been Jamie's first, as he was just in school now for a week and a half. So they had both bought their tickets, and after Jamie had passed, I figured that with what our family was going through that Alyssa probably wouldn't be going to the dance, but she said she wanted to. She wanted to be with some of her friends, and I figured it would probably be a good opportunity for her to kind of get away from the situation and get away from the sadness and get a little bit more support. So she went off to the dance and she was all excited. So at one point, they had requested that a Lady Gaga song for Jamie. And everyone of Jamie's friends got into a circle and they were all chanting, you know, just things about Jamie, good things, you know, because it's all his friends and such. And all of a sudden, some of the kids that were bullying Jamie all these years started to chant, you know, Jamie's dead, Jamie's dead. You know, basically that they were happy about it and it, you know, should have happened, it's about time it happened, that kind of stuff. So here I am hosting people at my house, and this was after one of the wakes, and all of a sudden Alyssa comes home crying and crying because she couldn't believe that, you know, she was going there for support. She expected everyone to be there to give her the support that she needed, hold her hand, you know, console her, and she was just outraged with the hate that was still out there, even after a passing of a young boy.
Amanda Nickerson and Daniela Wolf, I want to bring you into this conversation because obviously it goes to the schools and what's happening with cyberbullying. Perhaps maybe to start with you, Amanda, and your work at the Alberti Center. Would you consider cyberbullying an epidemic at this point?
I guess it's a very serious problem. Epidemic to me, it gives the idea that it's so widespread and pervasive, and I think we just do have to remember that a lot of us are using technology for the good, and that 1 in 5 are cyberbullied, but there's about 9.9 out of 10 that are using technology in a lot of positive ways. So it's tough to say, you know, whether it's an epidemic or not, but it's a very serious problem that we need to continue to try to prevent.
Daniela, how prevalent have you found it in your school district in Amherst?
I think in general, the use of technology, it's changed the way bullying looks. It's gone from, you know, being face-to-face, something that, you know, you see exactly where it's coming from, who is present, who sees it, you know, and it's in a set time frame, to something that just becomes more constant and more chronic, you know, where maybe home was a safe place that you could go. Now it's coming into the home with you. It's coming into your weekends, and the audience is changing from maybe 5 or 6 people witnessing it to hundreds, possibly thousands. So, you know, it's more just kind of taken something that was already existing and changed the dynamics of how often and where it's coming from. You don't always know who's posting something or how many people have seen it, and so it just makes it a very different issue than what it was even, say, 10, 15 years ago.
Sure. I know I read an article too that said sometimes the teachers are the first to realize a student is being cyberbullied. Mm-hmm. They may see it in the classroom or some event that's happening around that student and behavior. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you know, your district again has witnessed?
Yeah, I think definitely with any type of bullying, you're going to see changes in the student as far as their interest in school, their investment in their education, their focus as far as, you know, attentiveness to school. Sometimes they become more nervous, more apprehensive in participating. Sometimes their attendance itself and its grades can change, so it can have a lot of dramatic effects on their education.
We want our audience to definitely on Facebook give us a post and make some comments or have some questions for our panelists. We really want to engage you in this, especially if there's any teachers, educators, or any students out there that are able to participate. We have reached out to a lot of schools and districts. If you're in a classroom watching, we want to hear from you. We want to help you out and help prevent this problem, especially for those who have experienced this. What other most effective levels do you deal with the students, and perhaps either in the prevention methods that your organization offers or what you're doing in school?
I think we're working actually very collaboratively in the prevention efforts as far as trying to educate students not only about, you know, what you said, that what you're posting, the permanency of what you're posting and what you're saying and how many people can reach, but also just even the character of empathy. You know, a lot of times they can't see that person's reaction to what they post, and so it's hard for them to put themselves in that other person's shoes. So really helping them to, you know, be able to empathize with how somebody might feel when they hear something and be able to put themselves in somebody else's situation before they say something, or to motivate them to respond to something is I know, a lot of what we've been doing.
Tracy, how did you feel the way it was handled, and that the students, of course, today would be 20 years of age, as well as your son, but how did you move on from that point, and especially having another child?
It wasn't easy. You know, at first when it came to light about what had happened, you know, I tell everyone, honestly, the way Jamie was bullied from, you know, 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, I always had it in my mind that he might commit suicide, and, you know, we were getting him the help that he needed. But it just seemed like at the time, again, 2nd grade and such, it wasn't talked about in the schools as much. And the cycle that a child goes through, both my kids, they always talked honestly with us. And so we felt we had a handle on the situation because they didn't want to talk about it at school. They didn't want to talk to a teacher. They did have the guidance counselors that they got close to, so they would open up to them. But they felt like if they went up to the teachers and a student saw, you know, they'd get picked on more. So as the years progressed, Jamie continued to talk to us, and it actually just had stopped sometime like in 8th grade, because with him being in middle school, he was the big fish in a little pond now, so he had a real nice year. So all those years when he was getting picked on, no one really talked about it. I mean, we had the conversation with him all the time, and we would even pull him aside from Alyssa so he wouldn't feel embarrassed. But I never, or the family, we never wanted to talk to friends about it because we thought it would embarrass Jamie or whatever. So you never really heard about bullying until Jamie's incident happened. Then all of a sudden it got out there, and now you're hearing the schools talking about it. Before, they just would kind of tell them, like, buck up, you know, take this home, don't be doing this on school grounds. But again, with the internet and, you know, the kids being able to get texting or on social media with their phone, a tablet, at their desk, the nature of it being 24/7, they just have no escape from it. But when shortly after Jamie, at his school, it was just kind of alarming to me that they still weren't really talking about it too much. And they were actually, you know, because of course they were in the forefront. Here's Williamsville School District, and of course no one wants a black eye here, so they just still didn't want to talk about it, you know, whether it was individually in the classes, because my daughter was still going to school there. But then as the months went on, and now even the years, it's just great to see the schools being active and such. And I know the guidance counselors are a lot more involved, and just the opportunity for, you know, like the work that you do, that it, you know, it opens up more communication between children and the teachers and hopefully the school administrators. So I'm seeing just as time goes by, it's getting better.
Amanda, too, the work that you've done, how has that evolved over these past 6 years in just exactly what she described?
I think what Tracy said is right on, that it's really been, we're giving a lot more attention to it, not just locally, but nationally. I mean, before 1999, there were no anti-bullying laws, and now every state in the United States has anti-bullying laws, and most of them include cyberbullying, which I think for schools is really a shift. I mean, the conversation even 10 years ago to think that what happened, because cyberbullying, let's face it, a lot of it happens outside of the school day. And so the question then was, well, to what extent are schools responsible or should be intervening in something that may not even be happening when someone can look at it? That conversation is almost absent now. I think that schools, at least in New York State with the Dignity for All Students Act, any cyberbullying that impacts the children in school can and should be under the purview of schools. So I think it's getting better slowly but surely. If we look at national data, the rates of bullying are slowly decreasing, which I think is important for people to know, because the epidemic question I get a lot, and isn't this just exploding and getting worse? No, it's still a big problem, but inch by inch, I think we're making some impact.
And if I could just add, I think the legislation has actually helped schools who have wanted to do things, but we're told, it didn't happen on school grounds. It's outside of here. You're outside of your jurisdiction, And so I think it's helped us to be more supportive to students and families because of the impact that it brings in the next day. So it's been helpful for us to be able to support students and families more.
I wanted to bring in a comment that we have, and it comes from Becky from Dover, Delaware. She asks, what is the process to report cyberbullying to the school?
There's a couple of different ways. I mean, definitely, we always encourage, if it's students that are coming to us, or when we go into health classes and educate students on what to do, we ask them to take screenshots if possible. Having documentation is always very helpful so that it doesn't become one student's word against another. Students can report anonymously. I've had parents call me, just to say, hey, this is going on online. You might want to check into it, follow up, and we always try to investigate any report that we get so that students know, we're supporting them, we're listening. We encourage students to definitely not respond because I think that only encourages what the bully's looking for as far as a response. And then, for them to report it to whatever social media site that they're on, and if need be, block any kind of further communication. But anyone, students, parents, can contact usually school administrators or a social worker or anyone in the guidance office, and let us know what's going on.
Jeff asks he didn't put it from, I'm sorry, what resources are available that schools can share with parents to help their children avoid or respond to online harassment?
I think, in addition to what I just said, and we do try and share all of that with parents in addition to students, I don't know if there's any other resources specifically, but I think, for parents to definitely be always aware and very vigilant, have conversations with your kids about what you're posting, find out what sites they're on. There was a special recently on Channel 2 that, even I wasn't aware of some of the different apps that kids can go on and what they do and what they mean and how they access them. And, it's almost work a little bit, but you always kind of have to stay current and up to date on what's going on because it's constantly changing. There's always new sites and new things that the kids are, have been on for weeks, and you're just finding out about them. So,
and they're just constantly finding ways to hide because once they were on Facebook, all their parents are on it now, so they're hiding away, and it's very difficult for them to keep relevant on some of that too.
Do you mind if I chime in with some specific potential resources for parents? Some of the ones that I think are excellent are the Cyberbullying Research Center. So even though it has the name research in it, They have information for parents, for students, and for educators, very easy to digest information. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NetSmart's site, also has a lot of great information, as does Common Sense Media. So as a parent, these are some of my go-tos. Common Sense Media will even let you look at different movies that are coming out, and not only the ratings, but how are people rating what your kids should be viewing. So there's actually quite a few resources that I think are helpful, not just in cyberbullying, but responsible use of technology, digital citizenship, and things like that.
When you mentioned the Cyberbullying Research Center, they had an article, How Parents Can Build Resilience with Activities Through Music and Books and different things of that nature too. So a very helpful piece of material. I wanted to ask you too, is cyberbullying ever considered a hate crime as well? And have there been cases of that that you can cite? Maybe not.
You know, the legislation around, or the cases around cyberbullying have been really tricky. I think if you look at the decisions that have been made about cyberbullying, the bar, I hate to say it this way, but it seems like there are some things that we may all find heinous that are not necessarily illegal and prosecutable, if that's a word. So the cases that have been, like if it was a hate crime, it would have to be very specifically linked to a targeted, protected group, and it would probably need to have a very specific element of targeted threat and things like that. I believe this will change over time, but as I understand it now, especially with freedom of speech and a lot of other things, that cyberbullying in the courts has been a pretty tricky issue to try to prosecute. Having said that, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm sure that there are cases that I'm not aware of and legalities that I'm not aware of.
I do want to get to more of the comments that are coming in. Darren from Buffalo wants to know, when is a good time or age to start the discussion on this issue in the classroom or at home?
Early. As early as they start asking about it, you know, can I have an iPod? Can I go on your iPad? Can I play this game? I think, you know, to educate them as early as possible. You know, definitely the conversation changes as they get older, but I think, you know, like Amanda was saying, the NetSmarts and things like that, they have some guidelines for different ages, you know, so that they start to become aware and good digital citizens and, you know, conscious of how their words can be very powerful, as well as just how permanent everything is on the internet.
Because when you look at the controversial Netflix movie right now, or series, 13 Reasons Why, there's been a lot of talk about that, at what is age appropriate. Perhaps Tracy, you want to jump in on that?
Well, coming from the home aspect, I just think of like all the places I've been in the past month, and here I'm traveling around, and you go into like Walmart or something like that, and here's this like 1-year-old being strolled around, and they've got an iPad in front of them. Yes, I know at that point I don't think they're searching the net or anything like that, but they're playing their games and such. So it's very easy for them to take the one step from, hey, I'm just doing this game, and whether it's educational or not, to the parents think, oh, well, not at 1 year old, but they think, oh, look at they're responsible, you know, they're not breaking it, and not putting the difference in there between, hey, they're responsible to hold this tablet versus they're responsible enough to get on the internet. I mean, for us, again, we started our kids with cell phones just for emergency purposes, like when they're in 2nd grade. And lucky for us at that time, texting wasn't even around. But then as soon as texting came around, you know, we waited a year or so, and the kids begged for it. And in the beginning, everything was fine with that. It's once they were able to get up onto the internet, do it through their phones and stuff like that, that started causing the issues. So I would say, you know, as soon as they are beyond just playing games. I mean, even online games, you have to watch. There's plenty of different social media that you have to watch. And I think an excellent thing that you were saying is about documentation. People think, you know, just maybe capture text, but there could be emails, Snapchat, if you can get a quick picture of Snapchat, and all these different methods. But it just seems like they're making them now, again, for the kids. The kids are enjoying it, that there's all these neat things that they can hide, and oh, get this nasty maybe text or something, and it's gone in a second. So you just got to watch what your kids are on, and again, it's hard to keep up with it because they're developing so many apps and such. But once you know your kids are beyond games within the house, you know, once you're connected to the outside world, you know, you have to watch. I mean, what's happening now is you have 8-year-olds that they have the same access that you or I would have, you know, that they can be texting or doing an online game where all of a sudden they're sharing some information. So to me, I mean, the earlier, the better. And I've seen kindergartners on the internet and such. So, and I know in the beginning, the parents really patrol over them, of course, but then soon enough, the kids may be sitting on the couch with the laptop or something, and then the parents are doing something, and that gives them the go to, again, have the same access that a grown-up would have.
Because Robert says, too, there are anti-bullying groups on Facebook, and he was curious if any of you knew about them, and are they helpful, for that matter?
I think, you know, depending on how a student utilizes them, they can be helpful to be heard and to be supported and things like that. You know, like I said, I think it depends on the group and the extent, you know, that they're there to gather information and support the student or take it to a different level. So in general, with all technology, it just depends on how it's used, you know, positive or not.
And also, obviously, the other issue is the sexting that's going on. It's going on from very young children in grade school and high school. This is another thing, just stressing that digital footprint that they're creating. What other things do any of you talk about when you go into a school about that?
I know, you know, we talk about not only just the permanence for now, but even, you know, kids don't think of potential employers seeing what they did when they were in high school. You know, even a future partner might Google their name and see what comes up and things like that. And realizing even if, you know, with a Snapchat, they might think it goes away because it leaves their device. If someone has it on an autosave or something where they can then forward information, it could be out there a lot longer than they think it's going to be.
Any words of wisdom that you offer to students when you're doing your speeches, Tracy or Amanda?
The one thing about that is I've spoke at many schools, all the way from kindergarten to seniors in high school and even colleges. But what I kind of find amazing is the kids that are in like middle school, the elementary kids will really listen to you, and you know, again, because they're still where they listen to their parents, you know, and for guidance. But when you get into the middle school and high school, I'm just amazed, like when you talk and you say about the digital footprint, and they all just kind of sit there and laugh about it, you know, like, oh, there's nothing I would do or whatever, and they don't look to the future. I mean, I've told my daughter many, many times, and when Jamie was here, the same, about what you put out there is always out there. And little things that we would walk through is, you take a video of yourself in your room. What if you have a piece of mail behind you that has your address or something like that? Or somebody asks one question that leads to another that gives away some personal information. There's, again, these kids are put into a situation that they are just not old enough or mature enough to handle.
I want to go back to another comment that Jeff had made earlier that I didn't get to right after his initial one. He also asked, have other schools held parent support or information sessions, and if so, what was most effective?
I think most schools are offering information sessions for parents that I'm aware of. An ongoing problem, in all honesty, is getting parents to show up. I know I've done parent groups, I've worked with many schools that have, and it's been very frustrating, I think, to schools because you may get a handful of parents that come, and oftentimes I think the sense from the parents that are there, I'm one of them as a parent that goes, are people that are already probably invested in these issues and or have a child who's being victimized. And I think a concern is, to what extent are we reaching those that we really need to reach with that? So I'm not saying that that's not effective. It's just, I think the schools often say we are doing what we can, but it's a whole community. It's a whole, it takes a lot from the parent angle about what the parents are doing. And thus far we've focused a lot, which is appropriate for cyberbullying, on the technology and digital citizenship. But at the risk of sounding corny, a lot of it starts with, how do we treat other people face to face? How do we value other people and differences? And really, that's what we need to focus on early on. We absolutely need to talk about how that translates into the digital environment and how that's different when you can't see somebody's face. But what is it about differences that make us so that sometimes we're uncomfortable or we want to say hurtful things? And how can we deal with that? And what are our outlets for that? What do we do when we get angry? It's those kind of social emotional skills that building from a young age are so critical. And I completely agree with Tracy that as they get older, it shifts. We know that. There was a recent meta-analysis of bullying prevention programs, and what they found was that bullying prevention programs are effective in elementary school up through 8th grade. And at 8th grade, you start to see a level off, and then if you're using the same approaches in high school, it actually has the opposite effect. So I know I'm very passionate about the role of the bystander and bystander intervention. And sometimes people say, how can we expect kids to do what adults don't do? And that's not the message, but the message is a lot of this has to come from the youth seeing this and saying what they think is okay, what their values are, how they're not gonna let other people be exploited. So I think particularly as they get older, it needs to be less about us trying to say, think about this and think about that, but saying, what do you think about this? What do you think we need to do to make a difference? How can you stand up for this?
Just want to remind our Facebook audience out there to please send us your comments or questions. They're here right now as experts, and they can certainly try to answer your question for you. And we are thrilled with the engagement that we've had so far. It's wonderful. Another question we just received: has anyone successfully used student voices to help spread the word about the dangers of this issue? Student-created PSAs or similar digital messages?
It's funny. Yeah, I was just about to comment. The one thing that has really helped us in the last 6 years is when Alyssa would speak at schools. I'm amazed at, just really amazed at all the speeches that we have done. You know, you walk into an auditorium and the kids are like out of control. And as soon as we tell our story about Jamie, you can hear a pin drop and the people pay attention. Sometimes, like when you get into the high school, they may, you know, get off subject for a little bit. They'll, you know, talk to each other during the assembly. But when Alyssa speaks and they can see that she's somewhat of the same age and it's not just a grown-up saying, hey, this is what you have to do or whatever, when she shows like what she has gone through and she knows all the technology that is out there for the kids and she knows how she uses it and she knows how other people use it, she can have more one-on-one experience with the people because, again, they don't feel it's coming from, you know, the going from parents down to the youth and stuff like that. It's so she just has a good handle on it, but as she gets older, she's going to start getting out of touch with, you know, the middle schoolers and high schoolers.
Well, it's so great with the technology as it keeps evolving and everything keeps getting updated on our iPhones and iPads. The students are empowered too, that they can make their own videos. And is there any encouragement on your level to do that, obviously with supervision?
I think, you know, we do try and have students act as advocates, you know, in a variety of different settings. And this is definitely one of the areas, you know, that we do try and have students not only advocate in general, but, you know, from the bystander perspective, and really give them tools and resources and, you know, strategies and you know, the belief that they really can make a difference in somebody else's life, and they can make a difference for someone else, you know, in ways that they don't even realize.
One other question I wanted to ask is, when you give a student advice when they tell you they're being cyberbullied or bullied, if they start to fight back, is that dangerous? In other words, if they go back and bully back, and then they're participating in it. I've heard some examples that some students say that that's worked for them. It empowered them and it made the bullies go away because they realized it wasn't really bothering them, that they were able to fight back. Yeah. But is there a danger to doing that?
Yeah. I mean, every situation is unique, you know. Like how you said, some people it'll work for, some people, you know, that's one thing we warn on is, you know, if you think there's danger involved, to definitely back off and get an educator, school administrator, or somebody involved.
What about the threats too that are being made? A student will get on social media and perhaps make a threat against a school, and we hear the school's in lockdown, or there's some type of threat that emerged from Facebook or social media, I should say, and they usually are caught. Have you had those situations in your district, or?
I'm not sure, but I think in general, you know, I think, you know, technology, when people put things out there, a lot of times they're looking for help. You know, they're looking for, you know, somebody, I need help with something, and I'm going to get attention, and I'm going to look to, you know, get that. So, you know, looking at a threat against a school, I don't know, you know, it's so much cyberbullying versus just a different kind of threat. You know, so I think it's a little bit different, but I think a lot of times, you know, reaching out to the student and looking at what they need, what are they looking for, and how to help support them, because obviously they're struggling with something as well. And I think, you know, in general, even if a student was bullying another student, a lot of times, you know, to try and find that aspect to help them as well.
Before we close out on the show, and maybe we'll get a few more comments before that happens, I just wanted to individually ask each of you a final thought as we leave here today on what you hope that we can do to prevent some of this really bad behavior of cyberbullying. Amanda, perhaps you could begin.
Keep this conversation going, keep people's minds and attention on it, and realize that it takes really every one of us, from the behavior that we're modeling in the home, in the schools, in the workplace, for how to treat other people, and that, I guess that's it. I mean, I've given a lot of the kind of empowerment and the teaching of skills, but really getting to people to think about the impact of their behavior on others.
Tracy?
I know a lot of people, they're quick to blame the parents and stuff like that, but again, educating the kids as early as possible and talking them through, again, right and wrong, which parents should do, but I just find it, to me, I think having classes in school, they talk about how important math is, or science, or social studies and that stuff. To me, I'm not sure if they have anything in the school like this, but back when I was in middle school, like they had home and careers and stuff like that, home ec. They should have classes that, I mean, not just on bullying, cyberbullying, but just how to show empathy, and, you know, I mean, I don't want to push too much on the schools, you know, they'd be saying, okay, you're the parents, you know, don't be pushing everything our way, but it's the more education that these kids can get, the better, but just like you said, keep it in the forefront. And unfortunately, everyone knows that a lot of times the parents might not go to the school for these meetings because their kids aren't bullied. And it's like, yeah, it's not going to happen to my kid. And then as soon as it happens to your child, then you're ready to fight for it. So the more we can get the education out there that it takes more than just the kids that are being bullied, the bullies and everything, you know, it's our whole society has to take action here.
Daniela, final thought.
I think definitely to piggyback on what Amanda and Tracy both said, you know, to continue the conversation, to keep talking. Having one discussion, you know, isn't going to be enough because there's always going to be a new app or a new show or a new something that's kind of pushing the envelope, and to keep talking, you know, with your kids and as a family. But then also, you know, as a school, we are trying to definitely do more, you know, so that it's not just, you know, math, science, and reading, but also, you know, life skills, how to cope with life, how to engage in life and engage with others and be part of, you know, a community and a society, you know, so that we're all, you know, working together and coexisting peacefully together and accepting each other's differences, you know, and to keep those conversations happening.
Daniela Wolf, Tracy Rodemeyer, and Amanda Nickerson, thank you so much for being our guests on this live Facebook chat. Thank you to all of you out there. We want you to continue the conversation. We're shutting down live, but you can certainly weigh in and keep that conversation going with your posts. We can share this as a tool, and we want to thank all of you for joining us. We also want to thank Ben Roberts from AT&T and our education assistant, Johnny Moran, and the NED staff for behind the scenes helping with this live video feed today. Thank all of you for joining us, and let's work to prevent cyberbullying.
Thank you.